In episode 1, we saw that Mike and his friends reached the forest in search of Will, who had gone missing in the rain. Meanwhile, a girl named 11, who had escaped from a facility, was also wandering in the forest, completely drenched. Episode 2. Mike and his friends take 11 to Mike's house. They try to ask her about herself, but she doesn't respond. Mike gives her clothes to change into and asks her to change in the bathroom. As 11 enters the bathroom, Mike tries to close the door, but she stops him because she is scared. Mike leaves the door slightly open. Mike's friends, Dustin and Lucas, express their concerns. One calls 11 a psycho, while the other thinks she has escaped from a mental institution. Lucas insists that Mike should tell his mom about 11, but Mike refuses. He reminds them that they sneaked out into the forest without their parents' permission, and if their parents find out, they will be grounded. He says that 11 will stay in his room for the night. Mike plans for 11 to leave through the window in the morning, ring the doorbell, and when his mom opens the door, she will send 11 back to where she came from. After discussing this, Dustin and Lucas go home. Later, Mike asks 11 for her name. She shows him a tattoo on her arm that says 011, indicating that her name is 11. Mike introduces himself and says, "Good night," before turning off the lights and going to sleep. Meanwhile, Will's mom, Joyce, and his brother Jonathan are shown. Jonathan brings breakfast for Joyce, but she is extremely worried about Will. She asks him to make Xerox copies of Will's photograph from missing person posters. As Jonathan tries to comfort her, someone knocks on the door. Joyce opens the door to see Chief Hopper and asks him about her son. Hopper, however, is skeptical about Joyce's claim that Will called her. Hopper then goes to his car, and Jonathan asks him if he can join the search. However, Hopper tells him to stay with his mother and drives away. At breakfast, Mike, his mother, and his sister Nancy are eating together. Nancy scolds Mike for eating too fast. Mike teases Nancy about studying human anatomy last night, referring to her interest in Steve. Mike then takes breakfast to 11 and reminds her about the plan to exit through the window and ring the doorbell. However, 11 refuses. Mike asks if someone is trying to harm her, to which 11 responds that bad people want to kill her. Meanwhile, Hopper leads a police team and sniffer dogs into the forest to search for Will. At school, Nancy's boyfriend, Steve, invites her and their friends to a party at his house. Nancy notices Jonathan putting up missing person posters. She approaches him and encourages him to stay strong. Mike's friends, Dustin and Lucas, discuss the previous night's events. Lucas assumes that Mike's mother has found out about 11, which is why Mike is absent from school. Meanwhile, Mike shows 11 around his house. When 11 sees a picture of Nancy, she says, "Your sister is pretty." Mike also introduces her to his family's photo. He then shows her the Lazy Boy recliner, which she enjoys sitting on. Jonathan is later seen driving and reminiscing about a moment with Will, where they dance together while listening to music. Meanwhile, Joyce goes to her boss and requests an advance on her salary since she spent all her money on printing missing person posters. Her boss hesitates, but Joyce insists, saying she has worked there for 10 years without taking a single leave. Her boss eventually agrees and gives her the money, along with a pack of cigarettes. At the same time, a research team arrives at Joyce's house to investigate, but finds no one home. One of the members sees something strange through the window. Back at Mike's house, Mike and 11 play with a board game. Just then, his mother arrives, and Mike quickly hides 11 in his closet. In the dark, 11 remembers being confined in a small room in the past. Meanwhile, Mike returns to his mother and pretends to be sick to explain why he didn't go to school. His mother, understanding his distress over Will's disappearance, forgives him. Suddenly, a strange knocking sound comes from Mike's room. His mother asks if there's someone else in the house, but Mike denies it and rushes upstairs to check on 11, who is crying. When he asks if she's okay, 11 responds, "Yes, promise." At Joyce's house, she sets up a new phone and sits on the couch, hoping that Will call again. Hopper and his team reach a cliff, where one officer recalls a local legend that someone named George Brenner once jumped from there and survived. However, Hopper corrects him, saying that a fall from that height would be fatal. Just then, Hopper gets a call. He reaches the crime scene and immediately recognizes that it wasn't a suicide. It was a murder. Another officer, who is friends with Benny, is shocked. Jonathan then arrives at his estranged father's house, but Will is nowhere to be found. His father, who now lives with another woman, introduces Jonathan to his stepmother, Cynthia. However, Jonathan pushes him away and leaves. Meanwhile, Lucas and Dustin arrive at Mike's house and enter the room where Eleven is. Mike tells them that Eleven knows something about Will. Lucas, skeptical, tries to scare Eleven into revealing information about Will. However, Mike stops him, saying that Eleven is already terrified. Lucas insists on telling Mike's mother, but as soon as he heads for the door, it slams shut on its own. When Lucas tries again, the door slams and locks itself. Eleven stands up and says, "No. No one will tell anyone." Jonathan is then seen in the woods taking photographs. He hears something unusual and follows the sound, only to stumble upon Steve's party, where Nancy and her friends are drinking. Steve persuades Nancy to drink, and she finishes the entire can. Her best friend Barb cuts her hand, and Jonathan secretly takes pictures of them. As the party continues, Barb sits by the pool with her feet in the water. A drop of blood from her hand falls into the pool. Suddenly, the pool lights go out, and an eerie growl is heard. The next moment, Barb disappears. Back at Joyce's house, she receives another phone call and hears Will's voice crying for help. Suddenly, the phone sparks and disconnects. The lamp in the room flickers on its own. Joyce follows the flickering lights into another room, where the tape recorder starts playing a song. She gets scared and rushes outside, but when she looks back, the lights start flickering again. Gathering courage, she goes back inside. Meanwhile, Nancy goes upstairs with Steve to change clothes, despite Barb's warning to leave. Jonathan captures photos of Nancy through the window. The episode ends as Joyce experiences a supernatural event, with shadows forming on the wall and eerie lights flickering. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel and share it.